So Denzel Washington delves into a supernatural detective thriller, searching for a criminal he's already met, already caught, and already killed. His time is entirely on the side of an evil that's far more than he could imagine. Fallen. Detective John Hobbs, alongside his boss, Lieutenant Stanton, see justice done as serial killer Edgar Reese, whom Hobbs hunted and captured, awaits his execution. Reese requests Hobbs' presence and posits a peculiar riddle of why there's a space between Lyons and Spakowski, which goes over Hobbs' head. Speaking in tongues, Reese exhibits truly bizarre behavior, seeming almost exuberant at his gas chamber execution. However, something goes unseen by all after his death, as a disembodied force finds a new host. Putting Reese behind him, Hobbs is jarred back to him when he is called in the middle of the night, just as Reese used to do, and is given an anonymous tip towards a murder, which he and his partner Jonesy investigate, only to find Reese's riddle sprawled on the wall of the crime scene. In running the riddle past a colleague, fellow detective Lou interjects saying Spakowski was a cop, notorious for being a world-class jerk, but was honored with his name on a board for outstanding courageous valor, which just so happens to have an empty space between his name and George Lyons. Hobbs' inquisitive research leads him to Robert Milano, a cop who allegedly took his own life after a series of criminal allegations. Hobbs soon visits his daughter Greta Milano to look beneath the surface of the sealed records and news reports. Yet fearing for her own safety, Hobbs disengages from her, but soon finds himself embroiled in another crime scene, where the victim's fingerprints were found all over his previous crime scene. The questions lead Hobbs to Milano's abandoned cabin upstate, and discovers books on demonology, and the word Azazel, hidden under a painted wall. All the while, Hobbs has been stalked by this homicidal entity that once embodied Edgar Reese, and continues to play mind games with him. At the precinct, Hobbs has a strange encounter when Lou and a string of other colleagues begin singing in succession the same song Reese sang right before his execution. This forces Hobbs to chase after random people who all seem to be a link in the chain, and reveal that it is Azazel. Greta soon confirms that Reese wasn't Reese, but a fallen angel who is deprived of form, forced to exist within the bodies of others, and can transfer itself by a simple touch. However, those who are pure of spirit are immune, such as when Reese shook Hobbs' hand before the execution. For those people, only when one of these fallen hosts has died, and is fighting for his life to survive disembodied, can it forcibly enter into anyone. Yet Greta is soon stalked by Azazel, chasing her in a successive chain of host bodies, and narrowly escaping with her life. Rattled by this, she confides in Hobbs that even years of preparing for that moment wasn't enough. Soon Azazel weaves a web of doubt, murder, and tragedy around John Hobbs, the same as it did to Robert Milano years ago. As Hobbs' credibility is fractured and his brother is murdered in his sleep, Hobbs must go on the run and confront the terrifying reality around him. Leaving his nephew in the care of Greta, Hobbs puts a plan in motion to trap the entity with the intent of ending it for all time. But not everything is exactly what it appears to be, with Azazel or Detective John Hobbs. So January 16th, 1998 saw the theatrical release of Fallen through Warner Bros. Pictures, which acquired the film from Turner Pictures by way of the Time Warner merger at the time. And unfortunately, the film just didn't perform. It only got about $25.2 million worldwide of a $46 million budget, and the critics really didn't respond to it either. They felt like it was maybe either a good premise with not terribly good execution, or it was kind of recycling other ideas they had seen before, and they just didn't catch on with it. Didn't do it very much favors in that regard, so the audience didn't turn up for it, the critics didn't do it very well, but I responded well to it. I saw it in the theater in 1998, and I very much said, hey, this was a pretty damn good film. And I've always pretty much kind of thought about that ever since. Just like I've got it on DVD, I got it on Blu-ray, I've kind of supported the film over the years.
But it wasn't until relatively recently I kind of realized, like, despite all the chatter everyone's had online, the fact that it was like on TNT or something else like that, on a regular rotation back like the 2000s, I didn't realize that film didn't make money. I always felt like something that was just like Gregory accepted that it kind of was a successful film and well regarded and stuff like that. So reading back and seeing what happened to it at the time, it's a bit of an awakening to that degree how perceptions and kind of the much more cult sort of fan base kind of rise up and overtake whatever was the word back in the day there. But the entire thing came together through Academy Awards nominated screenwriter Nicholas Kazan, who had been nominated for his work on Reversal of Fortune. We also got Jeremy Irons his Oscar nomination and win. And he kind of put together the entire thing through that one sequence kind of early on the film. And we got to go on this kind of like street corner, and the demons are just kind of moving by touch from person to person, moving along like that. How evil can be infectious. How your attitude can affect someone else, and that can further transpose itself onto someone else based on how you react to the behavior. One bad person's rotten day can become a whole slew of other people's rotten days as it moves from person to person. So it was an interesting idea. It kind of boiled down to this very interesting supernatural concept, and certainly not a concept that hadn't been kind of floated around here and there. Back in like the late 80s, there was like Shocker, there was like the horror show, there was like the First Power, like undead killer, their soul, their spirit, whatnot, moving from person to person, kind of keep its murder spree going after the fact of death and everything like that. So it's an idea that had been around. Even like Exorcist 3, it's kind of delving that realm as well. It's having a very down-to-earth, somber, realistic, grounded tone to it. It's very much a thing that gives this film a certain credibility to it. And it gave it that from director Gregory Hoblit, who had previously done the very well-regarded Primal Fear, and would shortly after this go on to do the Dennis Quaid, Jim Caviezel film Frequency, which I've always felt was a very, very good film. And I really feel that it's Hoblit's direction here that allows the film to go along at a pace. It allows you to process things, to kind of simmer on the ideas, all the things that are really creeping into the film a little bit here and there. And even though they kind of give the audience a little bit of a heads up ahead of where Hobbs is, letting you know there is some other force that we're kind of moving along from body to body, it doesn't give us enough context to be that far ahead of Hobbs. You know something is happening here they doesn't know, but we don't have the context for it yet. So it's a sliver of dramatic irony, but we don't yet know exactly the ins and outs of what it is. So we have to wait for Hobbs to understand it, to get that information pulled out from Greta Milano or various other sources. So it's like it moves along very nicely to allow everything to kind of linger a little bit, to kind of seep into what's happening, the ambiance, the atmosphere, the mood of the entire film. And so much of this aided by cinematographer Newton Thomas Sigel, who has a wonderful resume, wonderful looking films in his entire filmography, starting with like The Usual Suspects, The Trigger Effect, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. He shot many of the X-Men films. He also shot Nicholas Winding Refn's Drive. And recently he also did Sam Hargrave's Netflix Extraction. So, long career, amazing body of work, really good stuff. And this film really benefits so much from his touch. And though the film does have a very distinctly sort of late 90s feel to it, there's something about how it has a very earth tone type of thing, and how it's shot, how it's a bit more, again, a little more deliberately paced. It doesn't feel quite as much like it'd be timeless type of thing that would kind of fit in exactly where you'd release something in 2024. It feels very much different in that regard, but it very much evokes a feeling of the warmth that it has in a lot of the daytime sequences. You have a lot of this autumn scenery and stuff like that, but how the sunlight hits the different actors. They have these kind of like hot sort of edge lights and stuff like that. It creates this sort of almost dreamy look to certain places here. How it kind of just has that shimmer to it in those sequences, but we get to more nighttime sequences. It's much colder tones, but they still play a little bit like on the color contrast between the warm and the cold in that regard. And it creates a great atmosphere when you get into those nighttime sequences, aided by the score, aided by the sort of misdirection of the voiceover there. It creates a much darker mood overall. It just kind of seeps in, just brings in this haunting atmosphere overall with the entire film that gets a little bit on edge. I like how the work of how it's lit, the colors used in the palette make the entire film feel differently from one scene to the next, depending on what it's trying to evoke from you and what it's trying to set the scene for. So much of what Siegel does is just a magnificent piece of work. So they did a really wonderful job getting a great cinematographer here, and he did come up with the entire thing for the demon vision, because it was a combination of a very particular lens where they could kind of skew it back and forth as they were shooting to get this sort of almost wobbly fisheye type of anamorphic sensibility about it. But it was this Ektachrome film stock, was mainly used for still photography. They decided to use for this, but they also shot it at 6 frames a second, so they'd have to print each frame 4 times per second to get up to the 24 frames per second. So it creates this sort of slow motiony, kind of jerky quality to it that just feels a little bit otherworldly, a little bit more ethereal to a certain degree, but also having that sort of hyper saturation type of thing, and the high contrast creates a little bit more of a harsh reality that you're kind of looking in through. That creates a very smart type of thing that's like using that organic filmmaking. So trying, like, maybe today they would have some kind of plug-in or filter they could put in post-production to kind of warp the image and kind of futz around with all the colors and everything to do that. They found a very much an organic way of doing that in the camera so much. And they did things a little bit peculiar in that regard, because they're not 100% certain how everything will work getting processed through the lab, because they could find almost nobody to actually process this stuff. They had to find a very small shop, a very small lab somewhere that could actually handle this type of film stock. And so they shot everything about like 3 different times. They shot it with the Ektachrome stuff, they shot it a different way, then they shot it with regular 35mm film just to be safe. And if certain things went wrong with processing the Ektachrome stuff, or didn't look quite right, they'd be able to go back to the 35mm or some other backup option they had, and had to shoot it that many times. So it kind of increased the time they'd actually had to shoot things, probably affected the little budget just a little bit here and there, but the effect they ultimately got for the entire thing was very, very good. And the cast they assembled for Fallen here has always greatly impressed me. I mean, start with Denzel Washington. The guy's hot off of Philadelphia, Crimson Tide, Courage Under Fire. Just like guy's been building up just so far a really just impressive track record, and he's just going to go up from here. And it was so much getting him involved that kind of add a little more of the credibility of the entire thing. Just like gets a little extra something on top of everything they had going. And they worked a little bit with Denzel to kind of massage and refine things in the script and kind of work with the entire idea for it. And I like the fact that with John Hobbs, his character here, it's not just a complete straightforward character in a certain way. It's like there's a lot of different little shades to him in some places here. Like he's got a very interesting, unique family life. He's there with his brothers, has a little bit of a mental disability along with the son that he has. And so it just creates a bit of an unconventional family life that he has there and stuff like that. So they really wanted to have that. Didn't want just like the regular old type of thing. They wanted to have something that was kind of unique to kind of inform the character in a very special way. And it shows that he puts other people first. Like he had this relationship with this woman that didn't work out, it fell out, and just decided to kind of bring his own family back into things and take care of them and give them a place to live and stuff like that. Just like family meant a lot to him. It's like, especially, I like the entire scene where he goes up to see Greta Milano and she's getting all these questions asked of her, and she gets to a certain point where she's visibly frightened. And he asks her, like, well, is it the fact that if you tell me this stuff, is that going to endanger your life? Are you afraid for yourself and your safety if you tell me anything more? And she says yes. I said, well, then that's it. I'm not going to press her any further. He puts other people first and shows that humanity, that compassion about certain things, that getting to the truth of the matter is not worth putting someone else in danger. It's not worth that at this point in time, so he just lets it go. And he'll try to find answers and another longer way around the whole thing. So I like how that quality of the character takes such prominence here. You do have the cop, that he has great sensibilities. He's such a consummate cop with a great mentality overall. I like the entire scene where we got him and Jonesy and Lou in the entire bar there, and Lou's kind of throwing the whole thing around. It's like, do you take cream? Like, would he take payments? Would he be dirty? Would he be a dirty cop and take money from people, bribes and stuff like that? And he's constantly saying, no, I don't like cream. I don't take cream, but I don't judge. And he's so much like, he believes so much in people. It's like he thinks like 99.5% of cops, cream or no, are doing the best work possible, more good work on the streets than anyone else could possibly imagine doing in a lifetime. So he just brings that so much up. He thinks so much highly of certain people. I like that quality, that he is an actor that brings so much that genuine sensibility to a character like this, because Denzel is such a personable guy. he's got such a warm heart about himself, and he brings that into a character that has a lot of complexity, so a little bit of different angles to it that still informs him as a very good-hearted character. But I like how he goes about the investigation so much that this guy is very perceptive, and he's just trying to put a little bit of the pieces together at a certain point in time. Not everything entirely fits together, even when things are given to him fully. It still can't slot him into place because it's just a little too beyond his own comprehension. He's so much a guy seeing is believing. He sees evidence, he believes it, it fits together, it makes sense to him. But now he's dealing with such more ethereal things that are not things that he can see. It's something that you have to believe in. You have to have the faith in it. So I like how he kind of has to readjust his perceptions, readjust everything he has, and that there's this disembodied spirit, this demon or whatnot, this fallen angel that's going around creating this havoc, and it's centered around his life, and it's ready to deconstruct everything around him, to pin everything around him, to destroy who he is. And so much what this entire Azazel entity is all about, to take the purest among us and drive them down and break them apart and fracture them so much that they're completely just ruined to a certain degree. I like how that's so much the building blocks of the story here, and creating such a great character like Hobbs here through Denzel's performance creates such a great character that holds the entire film up on such a great pedestal and has such a great heart about him. It's wonderfully handled by Denzel. He's just a fantastic, fantastic actor. Hard to find a role that he has not excelled in, but this is just a really, really good piece of work and a very smart thriller that really brings all those qualities forward for such a great cast to dig themselves into. And Elias Koteas, phenomenal actor. Just like, god damn, this guy's so good on every single thing he does. Of course, I know him originally as Casey Jones in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles live action films. Then he goes off and does The Prophecy. He does this. He does The Thin Red Line. Ends up being a regular on Chicago PD later on. This guy has a really fantastic body of work. A lot of people speak so very high of him. And the fact that he can take so many different roles and excel in them as well just shows so good of an actor that he is, that he even went off and learned the Syrian Aramaic from certain experts. First one couldn't really give him the swear words. He was a religious person, really would just could not do it. So they had to find someone else, and so Elias went off and learned from that person as well. So for like 5 minutes of screen time at the beginning of the film and a couple little bits and pieces of the documentary footage that kind of sprinkled throughout the entire film, he put a lot of work into it, just like creating a fully rounded character with certain physical attributes and traits and ways of holding himself that a lot of the other actors who portrayed Azazel in the film studied his performance to get the little things like him moving the little ring finger or whatnot, like Gandolfini, Robert Joy, a lot of different characters in the film portrayed by fantastic actors picked up on the little things that he did in that performance to set the stage and reflected that in their own performances there. It's a really wonderful type of thing, just like everything he puts forward is such a full zeal. It's just like a full-bodied, raw, physical performance, the whole thing. He's just like, he's so into it so much, but creating such a very terrifying type of character. You can see the psychotic nature of it, but you see a very distinctive, chilling quality about what he is as you keep going back to that documentary footage and learning more and more about what he was doing in that scene in the cell with Hobbs. It adds so much more to his performance as you go along the whole thing, and he's just tremendous. He just makes an indelible mark that impacts the entire course of the film here. It's great. Everything builds up from his performance and weaves into every little thing. It's great type of stuff. And of course you got John Goodman playing Jonesy. It's like, Goodman's such a great actor. And so working with Denzel again on Flight years later, it's like, always known John Goodman was just an incredible dramatic actor. He's wonderful in comedy too, but it just when he can just turn on the entire thing with drama and everything, he's excellent. And this thing gives him a full body type of thing to go forward with, because Jonesy's a little of that kind of warm-hearted character at the core or whatnot, but he gets to play different things. He gets to play some jovial stuff. He gets to play some things a little bit more kind of just trying to relate to Hobbs as things that go off in different directions here. He's always trying to tether himself towards Hobbs there, even when things are getting accusations and things going off in the different directions, he's getting framed up. Jonesy keeps that tether and tries to keep him linked in a little bit one step ahead of everything else that's going on there. So I like the quality of his character so much. And when you get up to the climax of the film, which I'll talk much more in depth about later, he just channels Koteas so much and just amplifies it up to the next level in that regard. He's so absolutely just versatile, fantastic, wonderful in the entire role. Just gives all that camaraderie with Denzel and all the different things. And even working off of Gandolfini there, who's just 2 seconds away from being launched up in The Sopranos. He's doing great work. Just the fact you get that one scene, you got Denzel, you got Goodman, you got Gandolfini in this one scene. It's just all these guys working on really great levels here. It's like, it's wonderful talent. That's such richness of talent the entire thing goes off on. And Donald Sutherland, just a screen legend, even at this point in time, doing Stanton here, the boss of everything in the entire precinct there. Does a really nice cagey job here. It's like he's writing a little bit of a line there. It's like he has certain points where he's loyal and upfront and telling Hobbs that, like, yeah, this is what I got to do. This is on the level and everything like that. But there's certain things he's keeping tucked in. He starts asking about Milano and various other things like, you don't want to go that route. You don't want to dig that stuff up. Just act like you never saw it or anything like that. It's like you're going off in directions no one wants to talk about. Leave it off. But I've seen him kind of go off in different directions in certain places. He's a really charismatic actor that adds a little bit of a teetering quality to the character. You can never really get him full read on exactly where he's going. And it still makes that sort of uncertainty, again, going into the climax. You're not entirely certain where things will land and who exactly is who in that regard, and who's Zazel, who's not. So it creates all that really good type of stuff with all these just phenomenal actors playing so well in the whole thing. And Embeth Davidtz, wonderful actors. Just the fact that I knew her so much from Army of Darkness, but she's worked in Schindler's List. She's worked in a lot of like premium cable series like In Treatment, Ray Donovan, Californication. She's done a wide array of different things, and she's always really damn good. And of course, as Greta Milano, she's got that great warmth to her. I like the fact that she is a character who does, through all the tragedy she's had, through the stuff that's happened with her father, and she knows what was behind it. She knows the theology and all the different things. She knows all the little pieces of evidence that brought her father to that, and she's kind of weathered through it to a certain degree. She's still afraid of what's coming up, but she's spent her life learning and kind of trying to prepare herself for the entire thing, and she's a really good character. It's like she has a strength about it, but when she's in the face of Azazel, she's like, she wasn't ready. She's frightened, and she's just not prepared so much to deal with that thrown at her from nowhere. She just wasn't quite up to the task there. So it's just like how this entire situation bonds her and Hobbs together. The two of them, the two actors, just have wonderful, warm chemistry that clicks off so very well. And she just does a fantastic job just embodying this character, create a very good emotional core as well for the entire thing. I think she comes off extremely well in the whole film, just like everyone in the cast just rounds it out. It's a fantastic, amazing casting in our film, and it just creates so many different qualities about it that just makes it memorable on that regard. And aiding the film in a very particular way is the score from Tan Dun, which was never commercially released. The only things you can find is a couple of snippets that are kind of clipped out of the soundtrack of the entire film up on YouTube and kind of preview things in that regard, but they worked very much between him and the sound designer on the film to kind of bring the score and the sound effects together as sort of a symbiotic type of thing. To have them complement one another, because the score is very kind of texture based. It's very much kind of strings here and there, kind of creating a little bit of the tension, the suspense here and there, and an ambiance to a certain degree. So it's not like big themes or anything like that, a lot of melodies and whatnot, but it's playing very much an entire tense score in that regard. And pretty much Tan Dun's probably theatrical film sort of highlight would be doing the score for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but he did symphonic stuff, operatic stuff here and there. A lot of different areas he worked in, but the film stuff was very narrow, but a couple very notable things in his regard. And this one was a pretty nice one, but unfortunately, like I said, you can't get it anywhere. You can't really do much about that entire thing, but experiencing the film creates a very, very particular experience for itself. And the usage of the song Time Is On My Side, recorded by the Rolling Stones, is very much prominent in the film. Like, they probably entertained a couple different things, like maybe using 2 or 3 different songs, but it kind of caught on as they started filming the whole thing and everyone started humming it or something else like that. And it just worked as sort of a default theme for the character of Azazel. and particular sort of history with the entire thing. It's like, it's not a song that was written by the Stones. It was a cover that they did. They recorded it twice, actually. The original one has a sort of a organ intro and kind of a looser arrangement that was released on their 12x5 album. But kind of later in that same year, about 1965, they went back and actually re-recorded as the version that's appeared in the film. And that was released under the Rolling Stones #2 album, but more prominently, you can kind of find it in Here and Now, is on the Hot Rocks 1964 to 1971 compilation album, and also the Big Hits High Tide and Green Grass one. A couple ones here and there. Usually on digital streaming services, they'll usually say organ intro or something else like that, but you can usually preview things before you buy it, or you can just check it out here and there. But it's pretty easy to find in that regard. If you're looking on digital stuff, you'll find it pretty easy in that regard. But it's such a great track that just maintained a prominence over the years. Like, every time I think about that film, I think about that song. Every time I hear the song, I think about the film. So it's just a great symbiotic thing that probably did them a pretty good job in that regard. So it's a great addition to this whole thing, and just everyone singing it over and over again. Might get a little bit too much at some points in time, but I'd like the fact that you got certain people like Koteas and Gandolfini, and some other people really hitting off. Of course, Goodman, so good in that regard. Also, adding sympathy for the devil in at the end of the film was also very thematic in that regard. Just feels so exactly right for this demonic spirit, this fallen angel spirit that turned into this piece of evil that's been around for thousands of years. Like, of course, it's woven its way through probably human history to a certain degree, and it fits so perfectly well. No, it's not the devil itself. It's a nice allegory in that regard. So, such a great track. And what I like about Fallen so much, like, the thing to address so much is the narration. Because as you watch it the first time, you think it's just Hobbs telling you the story of what's going on here and trying to give you that internal monologue for himself. And as you get to the end of the film, it's an entire twist ending. It's been Azazel in Hobbs' voice narrating everything. And I like how they execute that, because you could do it and not have it make sense on the repeat viewings. You could do it where it's like, well, now that doesn't make any sense. Why does Azazel be saying this or whatnot? But they scripted it very particularly to make sure that everything they said was either Azazel saying it and seeing it from a different perspective, or Azazel kind of being the storyteller here and intentionally deceiving the audience. It's still Hobbs' experiences, but told through Azazel's perspective. And I like so much how Denzel does it. He knows it knowing what it is, and he gives it a little bit of this deeper timbre. And just like, it's such an interesting way to go about telling the story and then having everything turned around on you at the end. I like how the fact that they set everything up. It's all very well constructed in that regard. They don't have him say anything that doesn't make sense after the fact. When he gets the entire cabin at the end of the film, it's like, it's just me and him. Hobbs and Azazel. He never really uses like me and Azazel or me and Hobbs. It's very much a particular type of thing where the storyteller is intentionally trying to pull one over on you. So he's the narrator, knowing what he's doing, telling you the story without cluing you in exactly where the entire thing is leading towards. So I like so much they really did that smartly and implemented it very, very nicely. So I like all the different ways it kind of gives a little bit of a different angle depending on how you look at it. And it just really comes off extremely well how they execute the entire element of the entire story here. And that climax, like I mentioned earlier, is like, it's so goddamn good. How they're out in the cabin and you have first Stanton coming out. It's like, oh, it's you. Took over Stanton. And that's the whole thing that's going to play out here. Then Jonesy comes out, and then Denzel, you see him, the eyes keep moving back and forth. He doesn't know who is who to trust. And he's trying to prod a little bit here and there, a little lightly, not give it away, but subtly trying to see by saying certain things or going off in different directions of what he's planning to do here, trying to assess who is under the persona here and stuff like that. I like how it's playing out a little bit here and there, and just again the fact that you got these actors in this scene with such seasoned quality and know their craft so very well. They know how to play the subtleties that kind of tip you back and forth. Like I said, Sutherland's character is already playing a little bit cagey. You're not entirely certain, but there's enough clues there to kind of tip you in that it's not really him, but it doesn't give it away blatantly. It can still be Azazel kind of playing a game on him to a certain degree, especially when Josie shows up. and it plays all different kind of duplicities and stuff like that back and forth. It's really well handled through a direction standpoint as well as an acting one, but the script laying those elements out does it extremely well. On top of that, and the fact that once Jonesy reveals that he is Azazel and Goodman just goes full bore in the whole thing, doing the Mick Jagger stuff, the time is on my side thing, it's just like everything, it just builds up. It's such a great dynamic between these two powerhouse actors, giving it everything they got in the entire scene without going over the top in a bad way. Azazel's kind of, he's channeling Koteas from the beginning of the film and just punching that up entirely, because now he's got free reign to do what the hell he wants. There's no more masks, there's no more personas, there's no more facades. It's just the two of them. It's going to end right here one way or another. I like the fact that everyone's got a little bit of a plan back and forth. Everything's kind of twisting back and forth here and there subtly, because he doesn't let Jonesy kill himself, but he does shoot Jonesy, and it's the fact that I need to let you die slowly in order to get the poison into my system to have this entire plan go off that you got no one to go into after Jonesy dies. The thing floats around it, and it's going to dissipate, and it's going to die. The demon's going to die. That's the entire plan. It's a wonderful, interesting plan that links back into the Milano entire thing. How he kind of deconstructed after he put all these pieces together through Greta Milano, all the different research, all the little things here and there, figured out exactly what Milano was trying to do up here and couldn't quite nail down the exact way of doing it. And so he's trying to do a redux of it, refined, and just get it off in a certain degree that's like, it's such a great plan and a great twisting narrative there that's not disingenuous. It's very much organic, flowing narrative in that regard. Seeing all that stuff could play out, and the fact that the ending is so unexpected, but it's not like it has been thoroughly plotted. All the things have been laid out. You had the cat show up at the entire thing earlier. You saw that planted earlier on, so it doesn't come out of nowhere. It's just a little piece of information that was fleeting, but it exists in the entire film, so the cat's there. And you had the entire thing when Hobbs was at the police station, and there was a cat there seeing through Azazel's eyes. You could see that he could embody animals as well. So it laid all those little things along there to plant the little seeds. So everything that you need to know going up to that entire thing and seeing it again after knowing what the twist is, all falls into line there. I think everything comes... Kazan wrote a fantastic screenplay here. I think he did a really fantastic work to work out a very complex plot to a certain degree. A lot of moving parts to the mythology of our buddy. You did a good job to have Greta Milano lay out all these different things. Also finding a few other pieces here to have everything flow together and come together to make sure you had the rules laid out of how this thing functions. I like how that works so much. And there's so many interesting ways it went about all the ideas here. Like when Greta gets attacked and she tries to slip away, and it's like one person to the next. They did this entire thing with a particular choreographer named Russell Clark, who had done a lot of different things. Like he did cop rock back in the 80s. He did a lot of different things all over the board. Some things you might not think of. But I knew him so well because he's the roller skating vampire in Fright Night Part 2. Out of nowhere. Just like, oh, I know this guy. Let me look him up. And interesting type of things you get yourself into. But he worked on this whole thing to choreograph all those sequences when people are moving around and is touching and bumping into people and stuff like that. Very much a choreographed, almost dance to a certain degree, not particularly, but still movement and people moving in certain different ways and certain timings. And there was a deleted version of the entire thing where Greta gets attacked. Originally, it was Azazel coming after her with a knife, which is previewed a little bit in the trailer, but they reshot it with the one that's actually in the film now, where she gets escaped into the cab, and it's like there's like 20 different people that get changed into from Azazel and whatnot. So I think that's a much smarter way of going about it, because he doesn't know who she is yet, so trying to kill her really doesn't make sense. He's trying to find out who she is and all that type of stuff, how she links to Hobbs. So a little bit of mystery that he's trying to deconstruct in that regard. And so they did a lot of just smart things with the concept to move things around and still make an emotional core to the story. Like when it takes out Artie, John Hobbs' brother. It's just so sad. It's like it's such a sad moment, because you took so much time with that actor, perform that character in a very graceful type of way. It's like there's a heart and a charm to the character. And though he's got a little bit of a mental deficiency to himself, he's always such a sweet character overall. And it's like the one person that's so innocent, even beyond his own son in the film, that just like it hurts that much more to see that that got taken away from this thing. That's like, it was still a little bit of arm's reach or whatnot. Where he wasn't, it was going off to people who were strangers, just going along in this certain modus operandi, continue on from what Reese was, and just finally hits home. And just when it gets that personal, it hurts that much more. And you see Hobbs, Denzel's performance at that moment. Oh my God, all the different things. Like, he just has those moments and pushes the quality of the story forward so much when it gets that much more personal, that much more peril. And the fact that his own nephew gets martyred in that regard is like, I'm not going to let anything happen to this kid. He already took his father away. I'm not going to let this happen to him too. So I like so much all those different qualities of how the story progresses. It gets more intimate, it's more closed in on Hobbs. His world starts to fracture and all the type of stuff, and it starts to get pushed in on himself. And it's a point where it's like, I can't really just present hard facts to anyone to explain this away. And Azazel keeps putting him in these situations where the perception of Hobbs keeps getting skewed. It keeps getting tarnished. The good cop that he was is now completely in question because all these different murders linked to a killer who's already dead, and they can't fully explain everything, but the most likely suspect in everything is Hobbs. So I like how the entire story warps its way around John Hobbs here and takes that entire idea of Azazel being an entity that you can't really pin anything down on. It moves from person to person, but it always has the same motives, always the same intent. And I love how they use all the different pieces of suspicion and paranoia and all these different qualities to wrap such a good, solid story around. Like I said, some of the feel of the film does not feel timeless. It does feel exactly from when it was actually made. So you could probably maybe mark that against it. It feels a little bit more, maybe not so much retro, but it feels like it's definitely a film of its era in terms of the look of it, the feel of it, the pacing of it, the way it's photographed. Everything just comes off feeling, it was probably shot right around the end of the 90s. So it doesn't really feel like it progresses beyond that. It feels timeless, but it feels comfortably in a time that did take some respect for the time and the attention and the intellect of the audience to follow a story like this through the entire conclusion of the story here and give you a nice little payoff that kind of plays with you here and there, but doesn't insult your intelligence. And something that comes off very well because it took a lot of time to think through all these plot elements and how everything wove together and how everything would work going back through everything and still connecting it very well to get a different shade on the entire story here. So I actually think this is pretty damn good. Like, I was a little kind of hesitant because a couple of years ago I tried popping it on and I really wasn't quite clicking into the whole film, and I was kind of here or there trying to get up into doing the video and everything like that. And I was like, oh, maybe it's not going to hold up very well. Maybe I'm going to feel like it's derivative of something else that I've seen before. Maybe it's going to have a style that doesn't really kind of appeal to me now or something else like that. Maybe it would just feel too dated in a certain way. But I think it holds up nicely. I mean, one, again, like I said, the cast, I've gone on about them so much, but they hold this thing up to such an immensely fantastic degree. Everything from Hoblit and everything from Kazan really just create a very well-rounded story here that feels like it comes together with a great concept that I think is, like I said, it's been attempted a couple times before, but I think they just nailed it very, very well here. This, again, I think this lays right comfortably aside to Exorcist 3, and it's a similar type of thing of a killer resurrected, kind of disembodied in that regard, and kind of floating from person to person to keep on its reign of terror to certain different machinations, certain different motives, certain things here and there, but there are very complementary types of ideas that really were executed extremely well by two different types of directors and filmmakers and stuff like that. So I think it comes off extremely well in that regard. So really like to hear what you guys feel about The Fallen. If you saw it back in the theater in '98, what you feel about it then? If it's grown with you, maybe it hasn't quite as much. Really like to see which way things fall for you guys in that regard. And if you were really aware of how the film really didn't perform well at the time and stuff like that, and it kind of fell off, but I think it's already been treated fairly well on home videos, been given nice transfers. They put together a really good commentary track for it from producer, director, and the screenwriter, all that type of stuff. Put together a lot of interesting information to go through. It still holds up as a very interesting listen today, but I really like to hear what you guys feel about the entire film. So comments, likes, subscribes if you haven't already. And there's always the Patreon to contribute a little something every month to get early access to all the videos around here. And you can also go through the Super Things feature here on YouTube to contribute anything directly through YouTube. But anything you do, guys, to push the channel forward, share the links around, anything like that, helps extremely much to keep things healthy, expand things, and keep things going around here. So thank you so very much for watching, guys. Take care. Thank you.